Okay, welcome. My name is Ali Raskin, and I'm really excited to talk to you about something that has been probably the most impactful use of Young Living in my personal life or my personal health. And that is how I've changed my lifestyle and implemented Young Living solutions to support my thyroid, which was really struggling 12 years ago. So I'm going to um, talk about some of the symptoms of thyroid disease first. So first of all, there's hypothyroid, which means your thyroid is slow. And there's hyperthyroid, which means your thyroid is fast, overactive. So, and the autoimmune conditions with each hypo is Hashimoto's is the autoimmune, and hyper autoimmune is Graves' disease. So I'm telling you these terms so that you kind of know as you're in discussions with whatever practitioners you have, or if you're searching on the internet or whatever it may be. So symptoms, weight changes, sudden weight changes where there's really no explanation. You're not eating differently. There's nothing major in your life. Abnormal blood pressure, slow heart rate or ultra fast heart rate when you are like laying down and your heart is racing. That's a sign of hyperthyroid. New bathroom habits, specifically constipation, like pebble poo-poo, as I call it. Fatigue, mood changes. Like when I say, I want to go back to fatigue for a second, it's a fatigue like you probably never have felt before, where you are so exhausted, or at least I was, that my eyes were just burning. I was so tired. I wanted to sleep so badly all the time, and then I had problems sleeping when I actually tried to go to sleep. Mood changes, a lot of like annoyance, I would say. Like I was very annoyed all the time. Like everyone was annoying me. Having issues with your period, heavier than normal, or in the case of hyperthyroid would be lighter than normal periods. Losing hair, I was losing tons of hair. Muscle aches and weakness, mental fog, huge one. Puffy or dry eyes. Temperature sensitivity. So with hypothyroid, you tend to be really sensitive to cold, and with hyper, really sensitive to hot. Thinning of hair on your eyebrows, not just your hair on your head. Fluid retention in your hips, your knees, your ankles, your feet, and infertility is a huge one with hypo and hyperthyroidism. Okay, so what causes this stuff? Like, how does this happen? And yes, it would be similar symptoms for both men and women. That's kind of across the board. I'm sorry, I just saw some questions. I'm going to come back to those later. So causes of thyroid disease. So the general medical community seems to be pretty in agreement that high stress levels cause adrenal fatigue. And when your adrenals are depleted, then your thyroid is having to overwork. But one thing that is not talked about very much in the medical community is chemical endocrine disruptors in our homes. So our body care products, our skin, like obviously our skincare products, our cleaning products in our home, the Teflon in our pans that we cook in, horrible endocrine disruptor. So people don't really talk about this. Another one is vaccines, and I hate to bring that up, but I'm not trying to be, that is actually on the vaccine insert, that is a side effect of vaccines, is autoimmune conditions, including thyroid issues. So that's another thing. So most thyroid disease is triggered by something that's not hereditary. It's environmental in some way. Okay, standard of treatment. Let's talk about that for a second. So there's testing that's available. The average physician has a certain testing that they do for thyroidism, but that actually doesn't cover all your bases and doesn't really give you a full picture of what's going on. You may need to see someone more holistic that can give you T3, T3RU, T4, and TSH, and how they convert within each other is also important. And I'll get to that in a second. So, and it's often because insurance doesn't cover that. But I would say it's well worth it if you have questions. And I would also say, if you have all these symptoms and you feel like crap, and then your test results come back normal, First of all, normal range is taken by, they come up with the normal range by taking the entire or general population and looking at what their normal range is. The problem is that it is estimated that 85% of the population has a subpar thyroid. We're not operating properly. So what we're using as our normal range is not normal for you. So if you feel bad, then it's not normal for you. So I would really encourage you to listen to your body and push to get answers. If you are being told, I mean, there are people who have suffered from massive depression and they're being told that they have bipolar and all these health issues, and it's really their thyroid is messed up. Okay, the next thing is, how is it normally treated? So typically, hypothyroid is treated with Synthroid. Levothyroxine is the generic of that. And here is what I will say from my experience and from what I learned about that is that, here's someone here, let me mute that real fast, is as you're taking a synthetic thyroid substance, there's a couple of things. One is it doesn't cover the conversion that needs to happen from one type of thyroid chemical to the other in our body. And so the synthetic version doesn't do everything that a natural solutions can do. So that is one problem. The other is that as our body, sorry, I'm trying to mute all these things. As our body gets the synthetic thyroid into it, over time, it starts to produce less and less of its own hormones, thyroid hormones. And that is because it thinks it just doesn't need it because it's been given to it. It's not having to work to make its own. And so what you'll see is that people who have been on Synthroid for many, many years, every so often they have to up their dose and they just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. Almost never will you hear of anyone who's been able to lower their dosage without doing something else natural to help correct the thyroid. That's just what happens, is we just need more and more of it because our body is being told it doesn't need to produce it as much because it's getting the synthetic version of it. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about how can we support our thyroid naturally, and what are some of the triggers that are not good when you have thyroid issues, especially autoimmune. So the first is grains, specifically wheat is like the devil for any autoimmune condition, any autoimmune condition. Wheat is not good, especially today's wheat. It is not what it used to be. And not only are they genetically modified and sprayed with pesticides, but they are just completely different chromosomally than they were years ago. The other things that people don't really think about with the diets for thyroid issues is nightshades. So especially if you have autoimmune, so Hashimoto's or Graves' disease, then nightshades are the family of vegetables like tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, you know, all those yummy things that you find in all the places and all the foods. Those are really big triggers, especially tomatoes. At least for me, tomatoes are my biggest trigger. Another food that you have to watch out for is raw cruciferous vegetables. It is very difficult for our body to break that down. So it's really interesting is when I started to have thyroid issues, I used to love to eat raw veggies and I just never wanted them raw anymore. I always was craving them cooked. And I didn't even realize why like that craving just changed for me. And then I read that and I was like, oh my gosh, my body is telling me what it can handle and what it can't, which I think is like, thank you, divine intervention, right? Like for our bodies to tell us these things. Then the other thing that I want to mention is heavy workouts. So I used to love to really push myself in heavy workouts, but what that was doing was actually very detrimental to my thyroid and ironically made me put on weight, not take off weight. So be ginger with your body. If you work out and you get a surge of energy for the rest of the day and you feel amazing the rest of the day, then that might be the right workout for you. If you work out and afterwards you are like, can barely, like you just feel exhausted for the rest of the day and really depleted of energy, then you need to take it back. So listen to yourself. It should be helping us with our energy levels. Okay, so that's just kind of all the facts. the like not so maybe super interesting stuff to some, but important to know this information. I want to quickly tell you my story. And this is what I did. This is my personal journey and my personal story. I am not diagnosing or prescribing anyone. I'm just telling you what I did for myself and what worked for me. So I was in an extremely high pressure career. I traveled at least twice a week, most weeks, on an airplane, and had a very high pressure career with multi-million dollar deals I worked on a regular basis. And I worked in a heavily dominant male community. There was no forgiveness for family time. Let's say that, okay? And I was pregnant with my second baby, and I suspect I had issues long before this, but everything really came to a major head for me when I was pregnant with my second child. Here I had a baby who was like 17 months old when I got pregnant for the second time, and maybe 16 months old. And so I'm pregnant with this second baby. I'm back to work, traveling all the time with the baby at home. And I felt horrible. And I felt amazing with my first pregnancy. I was like my normal bubbly self, running around, like nothing stopped me, easy breezy, did all my yoga classes like a champ with arm stands and all the things, right? And nothing held me back. And I got pregnant with this second baby, and I felt like I had hit a wall. And I went to my doctor and I said, something is wrong. Something is wrong with me. And she said, it's the summer, you're pregnant, you're busy. And I was like, no, something's wrong. And she kept pushing me off visit after visit. And finally I called her office and I said, I'm coming in today, and I don't care how many liters of blood you need to take from me. I want you to run every single test. I will pay in cash. I don't care if the insurance covers it. Run them all. I don't care. And I came in and they ran tests on me, and I got a phone call like within, I think with it maybe the same day, it might've been the next day. And my doctor was like, oh my goodness, you have dangerously low thyroid. It is like, it could, and I started researching, and that's very dangerous for your baby. Like really not safe for your baby, for your thyroid to be messed up. So I talked to some natural people, and at the time, the only thing they knew about was Armour Thyroid, which was taken off the market during my pregnancy. So that was not an option for me. So I went on Thyroid while I was pregnant, which was not by choice, but because like I had to do something. And what I found was that I felt better in some ways, but I still had some really weird symptoms. Like when you're pregnant, if you've ever been pregnant before, you would know that like you really don't lose hair. Like you have more hair, like when you're pregnant, you just like this massive mane of gorgeous hair. And after you have a baby, often is when you start to shed that hair. Well, I was shedding hair massively while pregnant. And I was like, something is wrong, right? So I got on Thyroid. My hair stopped falling out as badly. I had a little bit more energy. I didn't have as many problems. And then after my pregnancy, I had what's called pregnancy-induced thyroid syndrome is the name that they give it. Whatever, doesn't mean any, like all it means is that your hormones are wonk. Your hormones are wonk and your body doesn't know what's going on. And so what happens is you're hyperthyroid for a period of time, and then hypo, and then hyper, and then hypo, and then hyper, and then hypo. And it can be within days that your body just flips. And I was nursing my baby, and I had no interest in stopping. And so what was a miserable time for me in trying to figure out like what to do when I was having these symptoms, it became the biggest blessing, because I knew exactly how I felt based on where my thyroid was. And so after I stopped nursing and I found a physician that was more holistically minded. She's an MD, but more holistically minded. I was telling her that like, I really wanted to get off the Thyroid. I wanted to go to something more natural. And she started working with me with a compounding pharmacy, still a synthetic. But I was able to get my dosage where I needed it. And I would go in and I would see her and I would call and say, I think I'm off 1 microgram. She'd be like, really? I'm like, yeah, I think I just need 1 microgram. She's like, come in. She would test me and she would be like, okay, that's right. Like I would know exactly because I had been like this. So then welcome Young Living into my life. And we were having all these miracles happening with everyone else in my family. And I was like, I wonder months later, if there's something I can do for myself, maybe mom, you can take care of yourself. So I actually was at convention and I was with Danette Goodyear, who's part of our upline, and she's a naturopath. And I was like, Danette, is there anything I can do for my thyroid? And she made me some recommendations, which then I kind of expanded on. I actually was super lucky that I got to spend a week with Gary Young at Winter Harvest. And so I kind of peppered him with questions too while I was there on some suggestions. And so what I started to do is I started with Indoflex and Thyromin. That was like my first things that I used. And at the time, so I had made my dietary changes, I had changed my workout, and I'm going to talk to you about some of the things I did supplementally with other supplements too. But I had made all these other changes and I had gotten my dosage down very low on my thyroid medicine. So I'm going to say that first. And I knew how my body felt. So the first day that I took Thyromin, I personally chose to not take my thyroid medicine because I wanted to see how I felt. I just wanted to see what a day would be like. And I felt so good that day. Like there were one of the symptoms I didn't list on this list because I don't know that it's a normal symptom is my hands would be so dry that like I couldn't even shake someone's hand. Like it's like sandpaper. It was horrific. I was in sales and I was always having to shake people's hand. And here I was like, hey, I would like tap their shoulder and get like stuck in their sweater. Like it was horrible. So that was like my very first indicator is like, I took the Thyromin, I used the Indoflex and my hands were fine. Like they were soft again. And I was like, wow. Like I don't know why, but that is my key indicator of whether or not I need to address something with my thyroid is my hands. So I started taking Thyromin, and because I was on such a low dose of my medicine, I decided like, I'm going to just get off of this for a little bit and see how I feel. I highly recommend you work with your doctor. I'm not telling you not to take your medicine. But for me, I felt very empowered because I knew how my body felt and I was very secure in being able to judge my symptoms. So I started with 2 Thyromin a day and Indoflex every day topically on my thyroid here on my neck and on my lower back rolled on is how I started. And then I was still really struggling. So I talked to Gary and Gary said, bump it to 4 Thyromin a day. Take 2 at night and 2 in the morning. And take it when you're done for the day at night, like go to bed, like don't like do anything stressful after you take it. Let your body be at rest and then take 2 in the morning. And I saw a big difference when I did that. And then over the years, I mean, I've been on Thyromin, it'll be 6 years this June. I worked my way down. So now I take 1 a day. I went to 1 every other day and I felt like, I feel like I still need some support. Some people are able to get off of it completely and never use it again and then have healed their thyroid. I tried it actually a month ago maybe, or maybe a little longer. And I was like, I started to feel symptoms slowly coming back again. So I just decided for myself that I still needed it. And that's just, and my doctor has been amazing. So since that time of me, I went for 6 months just using Thyromin and Indoflex. And I went to my physician and I said, here's what I've been doing. I brought it into her. Would you test me? Are you willing to work with me on this? Like, I really don't like being on these meds. I don't feel as good. I feel better on this. And she was like, listen, if any patient can tell me that they know that their thyroid is better, it's you, because you have been able to tell me like within micrograms of what you need since I've seen you as a patient. So she was floored by my blood work. And when she immediately said, well, you can't fake blood work. Like you can't, that's a thing that you cannot fake. It's either better or it's not. And my blood work has been better than she'd ever seen it. And we tested it for, I think, 1.5 years, starting off like every 3 months. And then we moved to every 6 months. And then we moved to once a year. And then she's like, Allie, I just don't see a point of you having this tested anymore. Like, I really think like after this much time, you're good. You're good. You know how you feel anyway, which I think is really awesome. So some of the other things that I did is that I take Indoflex, I do Thyromin, I do Super B, which I think really helps my energy levels. I take multigreens, again, really helps my energy levels. Ningxia Red every day. And vitamin D is super important. I take 10,000, and I'm not a huge person. I take 10,000 a day, unless I'm going to be like in the sun all day long on vacation, and then I bump it only to 5,000. So I always take vitamin D. I think it's super, super important for everyone. And let me just, I'm getting questions on what I just said. I'll put that into the chat real fast. The other thing I do is that I take a recipe called the Skinny, and I do that every day, and I add nutmeg to it. And the Skinny recipe is like, helps you burn fat and just keep your blood sugar in check and things like that. And so I add extra nutmeg to that capsule because it helps support adrenals, and I feel like that's just what I need to do. Feels good. I feel good when I do it. So I do it. I listen to my body. Let's see. So like I said, I've worked my way down on my Thyromin. I still do everything else every day. I have since had not only blood work done, I've had thermography done, and I've had hair analysis done, and they've all said that your thyroid looks great. So I will call that a huge success for me. I don't lose wads of hair. I feel really good. My energy levels are really good. My skin has been good. So it has been probably the biggest blessing that Young Living has given me, in addition to, by the way, getting to quit that corporate career that put me under so much stress, is that I get to just help people for a living now. It's way less stressful. So those are like, that's really my tips and tricks. And I thought at this point, I'm going